Hey everyone, quick little announcement here from Fishing the DMV. Our Weekend Warrior Club membership on Patreon is nearly full. There are only 12 membership spots still available. Once these spots are gone, they're gone, and I'll be closing the club to any new members until 2026. At that point, you can try to join again, but it'll be at a higher rate. So get your rates locked in now, and you'll gain access to our 5 fishing tournaments each year for Patreon members only, 5% off your orders to Jake's Bait and Tackle, 10% off your order to Tiger Crankbaits, 10% off your orders to Catoctin Creek Rods. You'll gain access to our private Facebook group community, loads of members only content, and of course, ad-free, commercial-free episodes of the show. You get all this for $6 a month, which is less than a pack of Cincos or a jackhammer chatterbait. Lock in these rates now because in 2026, I'm going to be increasing the rate to new members. And again, I'll give you an extra one here. I'll give you 8% off if you buy the membership for the year. So that'll be $66 for all of this value. There are only a few spots left, so hurry up and check out the link in the episode description. You're listening to Fishing the DMV with your host, Thomas Ahrens. Fishing the DMV is brought to you by Jake's Bait and Tackle, located in Winchester, Virginia.
If that doesn't get you jacked up, I don't know what will.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome back to the Augusta County Fishing Show Expo here. We are live with the man, the myth, the legend, Kris Johnson. I wanted to have a special episode just to kind of talk to him, Potomac River, Tiger Crankbaits, Lake Anna. Kris, thank you so much for coming on. I appreciate it.
Yeah, glad to have you, man. Glad to be here.
Dude, I haven't realized you've been doing this forever. Like, that's...
It feels like it. It really does. Guiding... I think this is my 4th year. Yeah, I know, because I got my renewal coming up next year. So it's really been a blessing. I've actually learned a lot, putting more time out on the water. Got a lot of great relationships, especially even dealing with you, Thomas. Really educating anglers on the fisheries, looking at the aspects of, fish conservation, those type of things, bringing awareness. I think that's a big thing for us anglers. We've had many talks about, FFS and the effects. We've had many talks about FFS and crappie populations, all the way to the industry as far as how it's affecting, bait selections and everything else. So, just for me, I'm going to say, hey, disclaimer, this is not a paid sponsorship, y'all. But no, Fishing the DMV, your show, man, has been great. Bring a lot of awareness to other anglers, kayakers, fiberglass guys. I really appreciate everything you're doing, Thomas, in your show. It's very informative.
No, I mean, thank you so much. And then, as you guys know that I'm part of the Maryland Black Bass Advisory Commission. And then this guy here, I mean, it's a little early, but what do you have possibly cooking here starting in March?
So I'm looking at being part of the Potomac River Fisheries Commission on the Fish Advisory Committee. So I attended a meeting, I believe back in December, and I was moved to come to the meeting because looking at the effects of FFS on crappie, looking at the striper population, what's going on with the striper population. I think we need to start looking at scientific data on the menhaden reduction fishery. And I'm not one of those folks that want to see people lose their jobs or anything like that, but we need to understand I think it's a multifaceted problem when it comes to looking at the spawning populations, how successful the spawns are, the striper population as far as food availability. We look at other states, Thomas, such as Maine, the Northeast Corridor, North Carolina, and it seems like that Northeast Corridor, I mean, there's no shortage of large stripers. I've seen videos, Instagram, all over Facebook, even private charters jigging up 30-inch fish like no problem. But what is the correlation with the lack of slot-size stripers and the availability of Pogie or Menhaden in the Chesapeake Bay system? From what I understand, the state is looking at a 3-year study on the effects of the reduction fishery that's going to be done by the same offenders of the bay, which is Omega Protein or Cook Seafood, which is a Canadian-based company. I don't understand this. Just for me personally, I don't understand how a Canadian-based company can come in domestic waters and deplete our fishery without any type of scientific data. That being said, that was one of the reasons I wanted to be part of this advisory committee, because it's affecting recreational fishermen, it's affecting charter boats, charter captains. It's affecting the fishery as a whole, and not just stripers. We're talking about sea trout, we're talking about redfish, all the way down to the bottom. I mean, it's a food chain issue, and it needs to be studied. We can't ignore the data. We look at the striper population, and I think the last 3 to 5 years, it's just been very low spawning success. Now, could that be a correlation with the temperatures? Meaning we've been having these warm, I guess I probably got it mixed up, La Nina or whatever it is.
Yeah.
When it's
some Spanish word for different.
for different. So, is there a correlation with warmer temperatures or colder temperatures? And then at the same time, is it helping the larger stripers as far as food availability? Because you figure they're swimming from the northeast corridor, going through Hampton Roads, coming all the way up the Potomac River, the York River, the James River to spawn, and those fish need food to sustain, to keep going in the freshwater areas to spawn. So there has to be more studying. We have to understand the scientific data. I realize, yes, there's jobs at stake. I believe that's Northumberland or Lancaster County over in Virginia. I used to fish right off Shell Landing for redfish. I've seen the Omega Protein boats there. I know there's families that work and live in that county. For some of those folks, that's all they do. I mean, the District 1 representative, Mr. Rob Whitman, his son, I believe, operates one of those boats. But are we going to sacrifice a fishery and the jobs of tens of thousands of folks through charter captains, through recreational anglers, whatever, tackle shops even? This thing is major. This thing is big, and it's hurting a lot of folks, including myself. I think I booked one striper trip last year. And the reason being, I felt bad charging what I charge, and I get one guy to come. He wants to have a good day striper fishing, and he wants to take one home, and he can only take one fish from 19 to 24 inches. At the same time, I do understand that we need to conserve and protect those fish so we can have more of a spawning population. So in March, I'm hoping and praying I'll be part of this committee. I'm trying to put as much of my personal opinions to the side, look at data, look at scientific data, and listen to the anglers, listen to both sides. It's not about the commercials. It's not about the recreationals. It's about making the right decisions, right choices for my kids, your kids, so we can have a fishery for generations. So that was one of my biggest reasons to want to be part of this committee. And it's also, we talked about the crappie population. I believe years ago, even talking to Captain Steve Chaconis, a good friend of mine, those regulations on the Potomac, I could be corrected if I'm wrong, I believe it's 10 fish per day on the main stem Potomac, which I think right now is going above and beyond protecting the crappie population on the Potomac. Now, we have other fisheries such as Lake Anna, Gaston, those other fisheries. Is it making a difference for fishing sonar? Absolutely. But at the same time, we have to understand and maybe adjust size limits so we can protect the spawning broods, maybe keeping some of the smaller fish so they don't get stunted. I'm not sure what those, what we have to do regulation-wise, but we have to do something because, yes, technology is getting more and more, quote unquote, smarter. Anglers are getting smarter. What are we going to do to protect? I think it's a little different, Thomas. I think you would agree. Maybe that's a talking point too. I think it's a little different for the bass fishery because those fish are released.
Mm-hmm.
But there is one thing that is happening. Those fish that were historically like never bothered because people were running over top of them 70 miles an hour, those fish were just not touched. Now they're getting released. So we're stacking them in, one area like Sturgeon Creek on Anna or Lee Sylvania, say on the Potomac. But I don't think it's as much as an impact on bass because of the release. But I think it's more on the crappie.
Crappie and walleye are a big thing that's interesting. I had Jake, I think it's Jake Norman on, who's with the Texas Department, and they said for catch and release fish right now there is no massive like killing or anything like that the data shows, but it would be interesting to see with crappie and walleye and things like that, would there be a big issue with forward facing sonar? And that's something like you could have a conversation with that 100%. When it comes to, it's so interesting. I am very, as you guys know, I'm very libertarian. I don't like to get involved with like throwing rules or stuff because it's just such a slippery slope.
It is.
Really freaking is. And so when you see people saying like, well, but these tournaments have a mortality rate of this, and this. Alabama just did that, or they're trying to do the Coosa River chain, I believe it is, of lakes. They're trying to pass some weird slot limits. My question always to that is, how many fish are in, let's say, the Potomac that are 4 pounds? Because unless you know that number, if you say that each tournament kills 10 fish, is that out of a billion, a million? What's the population? And they don't know.
Yeah.
So I'm not against saying, okay, that is alarming. However, what is our sample? If we're killing 100 fish each tournament out of 1,000 fish of 4 pounds, I understand there's an issue there. But if that's the case, how is it we're killing all these fish each year, but there's still so many fish in the population? Which tells me there's more bass in the Potomac, for example, than people know. There's a lot of fish.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think, I've seen certain tournament circuits. I fished the BFLs that, you have as well in the past. And from what I've seen, and I mean, I'm praying I'm not wrong. This is just from my experience of what I see. And I'm not bad mouthing a chapter or, a circuit that's out here. From what I have seen and experienced, it seems that MLF, from what I have fished, from Smallwood State Park, they take care of their fish. I think Marty Gary's son was there with
Ryan Gary.
Ryan Gary, yeah. And I remember they were there and they were taking samples. They were looking at how many dead fish. They were there on site. There's so many bags given away. They staggered the weigh-ins. I think one of the biggest things, Thomas, is tournament circuits that are fishing, not just the Potomac, just circuits in general. We have to get back to the basics, which is the conservation side of things. We can't have tournaments in July and we're doing dry weigh-ins. We got 100 boat fields out here. We're not staggering weigh-ins. Everybody has a bag. And then I come on a guide trip on a Monday morning and take folks out, and there's 15, 20 bass floating at Lee Sylvania State Park.
For people that don't know, what's a staggered weigh-in?
So a staggered weigh-in, let's say we have 100 boats, okay? Boats 1 through 25 will weigh in, let's say 230. 26 through, 39, they weigh in at 3 o'clock. Okay. So staggering the weigh-ins, what that does, you don't have 100 boats sitting in the parking lot and they have their boat in the trailer areas. They're not getting fresh water. They're sitting there. I mean, it's 85, 90 degrees outside. You figure now, it's summertime, June, July. If that water's 85 degrees, well, what do you think it is in that little 30, 40 gallon weight, circulatory system that you have? What you've created is a death trap for those fish. Staggered weigh-ins. in my opinion, should be mandatory when we start having 70, 80, 90 boat trails. That's just my personal opinion. At the end of the day, fish care should be number one.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. And I'm not going to name the trail, but I know for a fact there's a certain trail in Virginia that he doesn't do it. They don't do it. And I've seen other trails at Pennsylvania, they take fish care to the utmost care. And that's the way it should be. And that, even brings up another point. And I think there's a lot of folks that are listening to this podcast, they probably remember the first Maryland versus Virginia. And that tournament raised $1,500 to Pennsylvania State Park.
Wow.
And all those anglers, remember that money went to Pennsylvania State Park. We never got a weighing facility. Until this day, Thomas, they can't account for that money, and they can't, where'd it go?
Charlie Taylor had an interesting point where, going back to the bureaucracy of Pennsylvania, where they tried to raise the money to put in a handicap handle rail on the thing. And it took them forever to get that in. They couldn't even give them the money. They wouldn't let them give the money until they created a nonprofit to give them the money. And then when they gave them the money, it took them forever. So I don't know what's going over there with that.
Yeah, Thomas, I think that is important, extremely important. I'm, disabled myself. And I've had clients that are disabled. We're talking about veterans. They sacrificed. And it does not make sense that we pay our license fees. We pay to enter the park. And we can't take care of the folks that have disabilities. And it really is a shame. Like you said, it took that long to get that. And I've had clients use that. So thank God we have that now.
If you could snap your fingers and you had all the anemones possible at Pennsylvania, do you think that would encourage all the tournament trails to use them?
As far as the weighing facilities?
Yes.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think one of the biggest things with our trails of today, we have to go back. I cannot emphasize enough. We have to take care of our resources. I think it was 2020, 2021. We still don't understand what happened to the river during that time frame. There was tournaments, it took 13 pounds, 14 pounds to win. To this day, we don't know what happened. Was there a fish kill? Was it largemouth bass fires? We don't know. But then all of a sudden, 4 or 5 pounders came out of nowhere. Where did they come from? We don't know.
Do you think they just moved? There's no way they just appeared. They had to have been there the whole time.
This is the only thing that I can really come up with. I believe there was a lot of hydrilla in that particular year.
I agree with this. Okay.
But it was hard to fish. And I have seen 2-3 pounders dig into that grass to the point that it's like, okay, how do I fish this stuff? There's no holes in the grass. So I think it just got harder to find those quality fish. I think they were still there. I think it was just harder to find those fish. Then all of a sudden, the grass changed. We started getting more Eurasian milfoil. Start seeing more holes in the grass. It got easier to fish. It got easier to locate. I'm not even going to talk about full-face sonar because I actually have used full-face sonar on the river in perspective mode. It's a help, but those that have full-face sonar, that have perspective, I know they agree with me. You can't see every fish. They get in that grass. I've seen them literally do the David Copperfield and disappear in the grass. So it's amazing what a difference in the grass and the type of grasses can do on how we fish it and how these bass can hide and cover. So I think it had a lot to do with the cover for that particular year, because it's like that very following year there was big bags weighed in again. So they didn't just disappear. Absolutely.
You mentioned, and guys, we'll get to all your questions. I know there's a couple of questions that came through for fishing sonar, and I was lucky enough to have a crankbait maker on Goldie finally, and he talked about 2,000 years ago before the grass came in, you could catch bass deep. Are bass still, are they just in the grass, or do they still move out to deep Potomac River, deeperish water, or do they stay in 3 feet indefinitely?
I think there's still some deep fish around. I think there's some deep fish around still. I think what happens with grass, it's easier to fish. It's easier to, and I know as somebody pulls in Belmont Bay and they see, 1,000 acres of grass, it's like, well, what does Kris mean it's easier? I think it's easier to break down because you know the type of grass to look for. You look for holes in the grass edges. In contrast, I should say, actually, when you have miles and acres of hydrilla that looks like carpet, no holes in the grass, it's like, how do I break that down? But then in contrast, we're looking at deeper water. And there's always fishermen that will go to the DC sector, that will fish, the areas near Pentagon Lagoon, 4 Mile Run, Oxen Cove, those areas, Fort McNair Wall, they'll fish those fish. Some of those fish probably stay deep outside of the spawn all year long, all their life, until probably they're caught and, brought to Small State Park. From my experience and how I fish, usually I'm not fishing deeper than 5-6 feet outside of the winter months. The inside of Quai Creek, Occoquan, Mattawoman Creek, the backs towards Slavens, those areas where you're using a stingray grub or a silver buddy like this time of year. I think it's the same way on Lake Anna. There's always some relatively shallow fish, and there's always some relatively deep fish. I believe it was funny. I was actually listening to a DMV podcast. I believe it was like late March, and Timmy was on there. Tyler was on there, and he even said the same thing. He said, "Yeah, there's always shallow fish on Anna. There's always deep fish on Anna too." And I think on the Potomac, it's the same way. I believe, was it 2017? I think it was a tour event, if I'm not mistaken. And there was one down there at the Poop Poop plant.
Justin Lucas.
Yep. And those fish were deep fish. Everybody else, what were they doing? They were fishing grass. So, and he won off deep fish, deep clear water fish coming out that clean water from Blue Plains. So yes, there's always those deep fish, and I think those fish are a lot less molested than those fish that are in Belmont Bay, Quai Creek, Belmont, Quantico, those areas, Chickamauga. I mean, yes, it's a fish factory because it's just those fish are just recycled all the time. But yeah, that's actually a good question. I've talked to a lot of guys that have been to the DC sector in the early spring and the summer months and do well. I think at any given time, there are always shallow fish and deep fish. It's just knowing how to catch those fish.
We have a question here from Lance Gray. He says, I just joined back in. I have an amputated leg. Would I be able to fish the tournaments? Is there any assistance to get in the weigh-ins? So I think he's talking about the boat ramps at Smallwood and Lee Sylvania. What are they like?
So there is handicap parking. I'm disabled myself. Some people's disabilities are different from others. We're not all in the same package, that same bucket or whatever. Now, I'm going to speak for me as a guide. If I know I have a client that has a disability, I'm gonna break my neck to help them out. As far as the system, getting their rides on the boat or whatever. I can understand that. And just me on a personal level, especially with veterans, I feel it's an obligation. Even though they're paying for a trip for me, I feel it's an obligation because I'm there to help them. I'm there to, help them have an enjoyable day. As far as the park systems, Smallwood and Lee Sylvania, I think there can be more. It's still a good walk for those that have a disability from the parking area to the boat ramp. It's still a good little walk. And I say this to say, let's say we have a disabled veterans tournament. What can we do to make it more accessible and help those folks that are disabled? Because this is just, for me, I believe your disability should not stop you from enjoying what God has given us to enjoy. It's not the end of your life. And there are folks that care. I mean, me, one of them. I'm just really big on that. Making sure that we have accessibility for those that have disabilities. We talked about the handicap railing system. Maybe there's more improvements as far as like on the side that people can, as they walk, to the end of their dock to get on a boat, maybe make it a little easier. But that's important to me because somebody wants to book a trip with me. I'm gonna go above and beyond to so they can have an enjoyable day. And honestly, a lot of those folks, that's their therapy. So that's I keep that real close to my heart. Absolutely.
And then and Lance, yes, to your other question about taking fish from the boat to the weigh-in, yeah, you can get people to help you do that as well if need be. Potomac Creek, Nanjemoy. In general, as the crow flies, that's a far as shit boat ride to go if you're going out of Smallwood or Leesylvania. But those creeks they have spikes where they become, you have to fish there or else. Nanjemoy came back, I think last year, there was a couple of Toyota guys, but that was gone forever. Why is it those are so violent swings of either they're absolute crap or winning bags? It's never like they're just meh. It's one or the other with those places.
Saltwater.
Okay.
Saltwater is a big, big thing. And honestly, Thomas, it's been years since I've been to Nanjemoy. I mean, I'm 8 minutes from Fairview Beach, which the closest, I guess, creek fish would be Potomac Creek, of course. And Nanjemoy is still a good little drive down the river. And then, I mean, you still got Port Tobacco River, too.
Port Tobacco, baby.
Port Tobacco River used to be, I mean, there was a ton of grass back in there. And there was folks back in the FLW tour days that ran down there. I mean, way back in there. Like I said, the biggest deal is the saltwater wedge. We've had these dry summers, no rain, and the snakeheads just like kind of took over. I think they're not as driven to the saltwater compared to the largemouth bass population. Prime example, what I've observed in Potomac Creek. Okay, I start there early in the year, March. I'm using a chatterbait, throwing in grass, throwing in near trees, deeper water. Catching a lot of bass. Around April, May time frame, turnips in full swing, everything's going. You got to remember, there's no tournaments on Potomac Creek, okay? So all those fish are coming out of Potomac Creek, Wednesday nighters. You got your Saturday, Sunday tournaments. They're getting hauled up north. They're getting hauled to, acquire. There's no replenishment to Potomac Creek. By the time June and July comes, there's not a lot of fish left because those fish have been hauled away. You gotta remember, it's a southernmost creek. Not only that, the salt wedge moves a lot of fish out of there. So I think a lot of those fish down in Potomac Creek, I would not doubt they leave the creek and go in Main River and probably move up north.
Makes sense.
Now I throw a lot of top water. And early in the spring, I catch a lot of fish on the frog, on top water, including snakeheads. By the time June comes through, you got to remember in May, you got the catfish spawn. I think that moves out a lot of fish. By the time June, July comes through, that saltwater wedge has moved way north. And I mean, I was looking at crabs. There was crabbers in Potomac Creek. I mean, Jerry Decatur, big shout out to my boy Jerry Decatur. He's a crabber, Decatur's crabs. He was crabbing in that creek. I mean, first thing in the morning, I'm ducking, dodging crab pots like I'm past Colonial Beach. So I think that saltwater wedge is why you get these hard up and downs in Port Tobacco River and Nansemore Creek and Potomac Creek, and I have seen it actually in Aquia as well. That's a good question, and maybe Thomas, maybe that's why a lot of those areas up north, Dogue, Greenway Flats, because this would be a good biology question. When we have that salt wedge, does it not constrict, but does it concentrate these fish in those areas of mid-river? Maybe that's why, Belmont Bay is so good. Maybe that's why Mattawam is so good, because it just condenses the fish population so much. There's been times I fished Potomac Creek for 8 hours and caught 2 fish all day long. I come the very next day and fish up Leesylvania, I catch 40, 50 fish. So there's definitely a correlation with salt water and that wedge and how it moves them.
Yeah, I agree with the wedge. And I also agree. I mean, the other thing too is just SAV is king on that place. And it seems anecdotally from people I've talked to, when I've seen from Pohick up, the grass is just hit or miss right now. It's not what it is. Pohick down, you have the best habitat for some reason. I don't know. Like Doug used to be really great.
Yep.
DC used to be really great. Green, the flats up there used to be good. One Maryland Creek up to the right that I'm completely blanking on. Piscataway.
Yeah.
Oh my God. I used to run up there all the time with some friends doing Potomac teams. That thing used to be all grass.
Yeah, May. I always had a thing. When in May, hit Piscataway.
Yeah.
I mean, May was the time to be in Piscataway Creek. And like you said, I don't know where that grass went. I was just talking to one of the guys here at the show, and he was talking about the Mount Vernon grass bed. That thing came halfway across the river. It was grass everywhere. Beautiful lines. You could just throw a black and blue Senko and have a time. And then where did it go? And it hasn't been back since. And I've heard rumors from it was sprayed because the Mount Vernon tour boat and it was grass getting in the props and all this other stuff. I've heard it was part of the Navy. I've heard rumors that it just from siltation and it more or less smothered the grass, the rhizome. So it's a tough call, but we haven't seen that grass bed in almost 15 years now.
Yeah, really, it's been that, and that's scary too. Because like, when is it stopping? Is this death of the grass stopping as it gets lower, or is it just still slowly just taking more and more of the grass away? I mean, if that's the case, when does Pohick get hit? When does, God forbid, Belmont and Mattawam, are they next in line?
Yeah, even as you were speaking, I even thought about something else that could be an issue. We had this great big old fertilizer plant called Blue Plains. I don't know if there's a correlation between this, but ever since they fixed or at least upgraded their system, the grass went away. So I was thinking to myself, when they had all this nitrogen overload, was that what was feeding the grass and getting it growing? Because ever since they took care of that system, is the nitrogen load the same? Is it less? So there's so many what ifs. It's really hard to deduce what is really going on. Because why is the grass still growing? And let's say, like you said, in Belmont, why is the grass still growing in Mattawam? Quantico, prime example, Quantico, that grass changed in Quantico Creek. It was like really good one year, then another year it's not quite as good, but it's still grass. The other thing that I have noticed, I call it crop rotation. I know it sounds funny. I call it crop rotation. So you'll get one year, you'll have this grass where I see it's called bushy pondweed. I've seen a bunch of that stuff, and you could bump a square bill or something like that because it would grow in that 3 to 5 range. You would bump that square bill around it, and the bass would be, on those little quote-unquote bushes. I didn't see as much of that this year. I seen a lot more Widgeon grass in the Arkandale Flats area, but I couldn't find fish on it. Most of the time, for me personally, when I'm out there, I'm looking for a combination of grasses: eelgrass, Eurasian milfoil, and bits of hydrilla. I've seen a lot of that in like Chickamauga Creek. There was some of that in areas in Quantico Creek. But one thing I had noticed, if you had a bunch of eelgrass, a lot of eelgrass, it was hard to catch them. But once you get that mix of that Eurasian milfoil with the eelgrass, you start catching. The only thing that I can really figure out, and maybe some of the folks on the show can speak on that too, I think it has something to do with bottom composition changes. And maybe that's what's going on the upper river. Maybe there's siltation going on that we can't see, that's not allowing that grass to be prolific anymore. We don't know how siltation is, changing the types of grass or where it grows. I've seen differences even in Neabsco Creek. Those that know Neabsco Creek, you come around that first turn, once you come across the marinas, I've noticed some siltation areas where I used to be able to navigate. So, and I've got to shift and change. That river is an ever-changing organism because it's tidal. The flows, even this year, Thomas, we got big. I think we're going to see some big changes in the grass this year because it's been much colder.
Cold winter. Yep.
The snow. We're going to see some changes, and I don't know if this is a change that we're going to see nationwide. One thing that I did notice is one of my good fans out here. How you doing? Great.
Kris has a lot of fans, guys.
Yeah. I just love people. I ain't gonna lie to you. That's one thing about being a guide. If you don't love people, don't do it. Do not do it. I don't care how good a fisherman you are. You gotta love people. But as I was saying, it's all in this winter. I think this winter is gonna give us a lot of different changes. I watched Conroe, and one thing I noticed, if he's watching this, Scott Favors, I know you're watching this. We talked about this. We said that we're going to see a resurgence of lipless crankbaits. I watched Conroe, and I seen a lot. Of course, they got the period with no FFS. Mm-hmm. I seen a lot of lipless crankbaits being used. Mm-hmm. I think we're going to see the same thing on the Potomac, maybe the James River too. This is my thinking. It's been cold. We haven't had a lot of shad die-offs. And I think we're going to see the same thing on Lake Anna. We hadn't had a good shad kill for a while. What was working for me was, vibrating jigs or chatterbaits. I think we're going to see a lot more of the lipless crankbait bite going on. Last year I struggled to get bit. Last few years I've been struggling with the lipless crankbait. I've been throwing, chatterbait. I think this year is going to be different because of the shad die-off. Now, do we have it on the Potomac? Maybe not as much as Lake Anna, Gaston, High Rock, because, that water's constantly moving. We're getting warmer water from the ocean. Those they're tide based. When we come to the lake systems, we're getting that water's just not moving like that. So up lake, we're talking Lake Anna, we're talking about anything above the splits. We're having that shad die off. Lipless crankbaits is going to be really good, I think, early spring, if you're not FFS. FFS is always going to be a player when it comes to tournaments. Those that do it, that's great. Those that don't, hey, this lipless crankbait is still going to be a go-to lure. I think it's going to be really strong.
How do you think the river's going to fish this year?
I think it's going to be great. People are like, oh man, the grass is going to die. Oh my gosh, the sky's falling. No. I think it's going to be great because, listen, it's just like a field, soybeans, whatever, and you don't plow it up. It's hard to kind of plant new growth when you got old growth in the way. What I think is going to happen, you're going to have all this grass die off. It's going to pull all this stuff off. It's not going to kill everything. The rhizomes are still going to be in the substrate. And I think what's going to happen, we're going to see a lot more vibrant green grass. I'm really hoping so. It's going to be very tender. It's going to be really easy to fish lipless crankbaits and rip that stuff out the grass. Last year, early spring, I'm throwing lipless, I'm throwing chatterbaits, and I'm having a hard time ripping it out. Why? Because it's that old it gets almost woody,
Mm-hmm.
and then you got that nasty black grass too. But I think with a good grass kill, we're going to get a lot more fresh grass, and it's going to be a lot more vibrant. I think Potomac's going to fish very well this year.
What should people be looking for as we get into early March here on the river? Is there a water temperature or things you're going to be looking for?
I like to look for at least 50-degree weather. I mean, trust me and believe me, you go out here and that water's 45 degrees, you can catch them. I mean, silver buddy, stingray grubs. If somebody said, hey, Kris, let's go fishing right now, Potomac River, I'd be looking for deep water areas, Woman. From those that are locals probably know it's a spot called Brick Point. From Brick Point on up, Slavens area, those are going to be good areas. Aquia Creek, those areas in the no-wake zone. You're looking for those areas. Even Potomac Creek, everybody knows the cut through. Those little areas around there where there's a little deeper water. You're going to look for deeper water. And I'm going to be throwing, like I said, a blade bait. I'm going to be throwing, believe it or not, I don't mind throwing a chatterbait. When I mean chatterbait, I'm looking for about 50-degree weather. People say, where would you throw a chatterbait in 50-degree weather? You don't throw it like a normal chatterbait. When I mean a normal chatterbait, I ain't talking about just casting out there and chucking and winding. We're not there yet. Look for those deep areas, channel bends that have wood structure nearby. What I noticed last year, I throw that chatterbait out there, get it close to those wood areas, then that channel bends, and I just burp it off the bottom, just enough to get it going, then kill it. Thomas, I can't tell you how many fish that I've caught over 3 pounds doing that. So I'm using that chatterbait, not traditionally, but I'm actually using it just like you would a silver buddy. They don't know that. You think about it. The chatterbait is nothing but a jig with a blade that makes vibration. I mean, you really, because I think a lot of times as anglers, we overthink it. We're thinking it's a chatterbait, chuck and wind. No, think about it. It's just a jig that vibrates. Way before we had chatterbaits, what we were doing, we were throwing a jig and we were just sliding across the bottom. That chatterbait will do the same thing. You just burp it up, that thing comes on up, and then kill it. Burp it on up and just kill it, and work down the drop. And it will work in those deeper creek channel areas or Woman, Aquia, Occoquan even. I mean, try those areas too. The stingray grubs, same thing, small grubs. Ned rigs. There's nothing wrong with throwing a Ned rig right now. So especially in those points north. So yeah, when in those cold months, I'm gonna say, Thomas, from 45 to 50, that's what I'm going to be throwing.
Awesome stuff. And then also, I think you got some baits there we should probably promote.
Oh, absolutely, man. So again, y'all, we were at the Augusta County Fishing Expo. I mean, there's a lot of great vendors up here. And what I wanted to talk about was a few baits that Tiger Crankbaits, and they're also a sponsor of Fishing the DMV. So big shout out to Tiger Crankbaits. And thank you, Thomas, for Fishing the DMV and this opportunity to share as well. As we move into the late February months, going into the pre-spawn, and I tell you, man, Tyler's so smart. I like what he said in your show. And I think the question was asked, when is actual pre-spawn? Pre-spawn is now. It's right now. I mean, it was weeks ago, pre-spawn. And I think, we just think about pre-spawn right now as wintertime. Wintertime is still pre-spawn. It's more of, I guess you could say, a pre-spawn.
Yeah, there's like different stages of it.
Different stages of the pre-spawn. And right now, we're kind of in that pre-spawn, going to an actual pre-spawn, especially on Lake Anna, being it's a power plant lake. Everybody already knows, man, when you start talking late February, going into March, we're looking for those sloping points, creek channels nearby, main lake channels nearby. And we're talking about jerk baits, similar to the Megabass Vision 110s. This is a bait by Tiger Crankbaits. That's a beautiful color. I mean, they got a ton of different colors. I mean, even if there's a color that, you can't find in the market, they'll send a picture or if you have a product, send it to them, and they'll do their best to match that particular color. When it comes to Lake Anna, I kind of like those jerk baits, kind of in a lavender shade, a crappie color, something with like a purple iridescent flash on the top, kind of mimics crappie. I think one of the things is too, when we talking about jerkbait fishing, we're throwing that thing, me personally, I don't mind throwing a jerkbait on 8-pound test, fluorocarbon. You want to get, I like the 110 plus ones style baits. This is more like a 110. It depends on where those fish are. Sometimes they're in that 7 to 9. Sometimes they're in that 3 to 5 range. So you got to pick a jerk bait that's going to, put you in that range. Full face of sonar is a big help right now for those guys that are into using the technology for jerk bait fishing. I mean, you can actually, see where your bait is. You actually see, where those fish are in the water column, and also how they're responding when they see the bait. Mm-hmm. Another bait that I like to throw is any type of bait. This is kind of like a Spro Little John. Any type of crankbait that's a slim crankbait. Very similar to like a lipless crankbait. Lipless crankbaits are good too. I like to start throwing them around late March going into April. But you're looking for a flat-sided bait, either 3 to 5 foot, 5 to 7 foot, or 7 to 9 foot. Right now, I'd be looking at a 7 to 9 foot crankbait. Color-wise, that's a red cherry crawl that Tiger Crankbaits does. Probably one of the top selling colors that they have. Outside of that, I'd use something with maybe orange top and a yellow bottom, or like a lavender shad, citrus shad. We're getting a lot of shad die off. So even lipless crankbaits, I don't have a lipless with me right now, but even a lipless crankbait, something that's going to mimic dying shad, because we actually are having a shad kill this year. So I think lipless crankbaits are going to be very, very good.
A question that came through, it's interesting, is like, when would you use a man-style diving crankbait? So I'm assuming he means a shallow diving crankbait. A man-style diving is what was said.
Yeah. I tell you what, if you can find, if the question is what I think, when you mean a man-style crankbait.
I'm assuming he means the shallow running.
Yeah.
Because it's so shallow. It's like, is that just a summer thing?
Yeah, I tell you what, if you have a man's -1, you better not ever sell that thing, because that was one of, trust me, that's a fish getter right there.
Is that a wake bait considered? Like, what would you call that?
I wouldn't consider it more of a weight bait. I would consider it more of a super shallow crankbait.
Okay.
That was one of the best super shallow running crankbaits, in my opinion, ever designed. I mean, trust me, I've been trying to find. It's hard. I mean, when they went out of business, I think there was a couple different companies that bought some of the blanks. They're very, very tough to find that crankbait. I've got, I think, 5 of the actual original double stamp man's -1s, and they are extremely hard to find. That was one of the best shallow running crankbaits out there. Ran about 12 inches, ran about a foot. Man, I'm telling you, around late March, early April on the Potomac, I would not be caught dead without one. Even now, if you own one, late March going to early April, find those areas with shallow water. Prime example, go to Mattawoman Creek. I forget that first bay on the left when you pull in there. And
I know what you're talking about, yeah.
It was kind of across the bay from what we used to call Grinders Cove. That was a good area. I mean, it's a community hole. A lot of folks know about it. And what I would do, I would crank that grass and those lily pads. There was lily pads there. Mm-hmm. So that crankbait would be 6 to 8 inches above that pre-emergent grass, and every once in a while you'd feel it and you rip it out. That man's -1 crankbait was one of the best crankbaits out there for super shallow running crankbaits. I believe Cliff Pace has one. If you look on his website, I believe it's called the SSR. I actually talked to Cliff about that. I said, Cliff, what do you have that you offer that's anything close to the man's -1? And I believe you go on the Black Label Tackle website, and it's called the SSR. That's a good shallow running crankbait. That's why I call it super shallow running. So
Gotcha.
back in the day, I think there's a Bandit used to make it. I think it was called the Footloose.
Footloose.
That was another one, and it was I think it was like Warski Lures. It's like a Timber Tiger or something.
Yep, Timber Tiger made one too.
And I can't call it, and you can't find that either.
Nope.
So yeah, it's really tough to find those shallow running crankbaits. And another one, Thomas, you probably remember this one too. It was really good for like rocks, shallow. This was before 1.5s really got real hot. Y'all probably out there, y'all probably remember that crankbait. It was the man's, I think it was a C4 or a 4-4. That was another good crankbait.
Killer B was one that I
Killer
liked
B
too.
was another one too. So yeah, a lot of those old crankbaits, man, they're hard to find. If you find them, at the estate sale or somebody selling a custom blank, get it.
Again, I hope, dude, you got your money's worth on that question. But yeah, like those different crankbaits like that, there's such an industry which I can get into. That's a whole other show about the crankbaits that aren't made anymore. What is that thing that they made with the skirt on it from Tiger Crankbait? That's an interesting bait.
I'm not gonna lie to you. When Hydeston and Greg Sinet built this bait and painted this bait, I said, OMG. And I'm thinking, what I fish on the Potomac and how I fish on the Potomac. And I said, man, my clients are going to be fishing this thing a lot. Because I get a lot of clients, they don't like to fish the Senko. They don't like doing the flick shake. They want to chuck a wine. And those days that they're not, eating a chatterbait, or I'm in a thicker grass area, and maybe, they don't feel comfortable like ripping the right out of the grass. I looked at this thing, was like, dude, this thing is money. So this is their wake, what they call their wake frog. Y'all take a look at that thing. So that particular bait is a wake bait that has skirt material at the end of the bait. So that thing is undulating in the water, has a very actual similar action to like a man's -1.
I was gonna say it's like a man's one.
Yeah, it really is as far as the vibration. Heidi had a great video of it at the show over here, and I mean it's a beautiful, beautiful bait. I mean the clear coat she puts on that is just super, super durable. The hook, she has like a little double little frog hook, which it's interchangeable. You can put whatever style hook, EWG hook on you want. You could. I mean, it's a great bait. I mean, you even have another hook area, like a standard crankbait that you can put a treble hook if it's more open area, maybe on like a high tide area where you're not as much in the grass.
Or curve.
So yeah, curve. Yeah, absolutely.
Just dig that thing in there.
Digging that thing in there. So this is when one of her best sellers, I believe in Woods and Waters, I think it was like bait of the year.
That's cool.
Then in Richmond. So I haven't thrown this yet. I'm super, super excited to throw this thing. I mean, I'm counting the days, Thomas, until I can put this thing in the grass, man. So it's going to be exciting. I'm telling you, man, I'm so excited about it. Listen, I'm going to put Thomas in my boat this year. Listen, we're going to put some fish in the boat, man. We're going to record this stuff, man.
We're gonna make that work. That's something that's on the bucket list this year. What are some other things from Tiger Crankbait we can hit? I don't have it out of the package. This is one of their S waiver crankbaits. But one of the things I think I talked about in Richmond as well, one of the biggest things is their color scheme, which is like their crab pattern. You guys can take a look at that. That's their blue crab pattern. It is not just a tidewater fishing color. It's can actually mimic a pumpkin seed or
certain variations of bluegill. As soon as I seen it, I was like, yeah, I like that olive color with the blue and the red that's even on the bill. It really mimics a blue crab on the water, especially this particular wake bait. Those that have seen crabs on the Potomac River, they make their own little wake on the top of the water, just swimming on top of the water, and their little swimming legs, are making vibration on top of the water. And that's one of the things that I liked about this particular color. It really mimics the blue crab in those summer months of, June and July, even May on the Chickahominy River. I remember my first time fishing the Chickahominy River. It was like May. It was like, dang on, is that a crab? So that kind of cued me in on looking at crab style baits. I think there was a bait way back in the day. I think it was like C.W. Reed or somebody, and they had like a crab style bait. So even the colors like New Penny, which are more like a shrimpy color, because we've had so many of these drier summers, we're seeing more saltwater forage fish and crustaceans that bass are feeding on. I mean, you got to remember, we look at a crawfish, what is it, like 2 or 3 inches? But when a crab is molting, and I've seen it in Quantico Creek, I've seen it in Chickamauga Creek, you get a 5-inch soft shell crab, and a 5-pounder, you eat a soft shell crab, that's one hell of a meal. So, the crabs are doing bass a big favor. I mean, that's a big, high protein meal, for largemouth bass and the Potomac and the James and the other tidal rivers. So, I'm looking forward to continuing working with Tiger crankbaits. One other bait that I want to talk about too, they make a topwater bait. This is a particular, I mean, it's Greg and Heidi, I tell you, when they come up with these colors and these schemes, it just amazes me. Sometimes I just want to buy them and just put them on the mantelpiece because it's just so pretty. I mean, that's just sick. It almost looks like marble. I mean, it's just a beautiful bait, but it's got a great action. She even ties the feather trebles on these baits. They're beautiful baits. They're like $15 a piece. I'm here at the show. I think they're. We even have a bin. We have like one at 12 and 2 for 20. They have great baits. I mean, awesome baits. I did really, really well with popping style baits, like the Donna Iovano Ricos, and even as this particular bait here. Topwater is definitely going to be a great bait in the September, October time frame. One thing I will say, I mean, we're way off. One thing I will say, in the October time frame, I use a lot of topwater. I mean, those folks that follow me on Facebook probably seen I was throwing a lot of topwater in the October time frame. Biggest thing I can say, cover water, cover water, cover water. In retrospect, we look into the spring. That's the same thing when we talk about our chatterbaits, or 3 to 5 foot diving crankbaits or square bills. Cover water, cover water. If you have forward-facing sonar, we're talking about Lake Anna. Scan, look for bait. Even if you don't see fish in the bait, they're around. You just got to find those fish that are around the bait. If you got bait, there's fish nearby. So I hope I covered all of these baits. Like I said, Tiger Crankbaits is a great family-oriented company. Heidi and Greg is doing a great job painting this stuff. I mean, if there's anything that you want, I even talked to them about doing a snakehead pattern on a jerkbait. Anything that you want, that means they'll do for you.
Guys, yeah, go check them out. We got one more question we're going to get answered, which is, what is the best hooks for changing your treble hooks on a crankbait?
That's a good question. I actually like the Mustad, the triple grips.
Oh, you're a triple grip guy too. Okay.
Yeah, I actually like those. There's 2 of them. And I don't have a hook sponsor. I like those Mustad triple grips. My second choice got to be BKKs, man. I mean, I ain't gonna lie to you. BKKs are just phenomenal hooks. I know Cliff Pace with his Black Label Balsa baits. He's using a lot of the BKK hooks. I've actually talked to Cliff about the BKKs, Japanese. I mean, they're just a superb grade of steel. Definitely check. I'm not even endorsed by BKK or Mustad. BKK is a great hook. I mean, super strong hook. Definitely give them a shout.
Are they round bends or triple grip styles?
I believe a lot that I've seen, I think they do have those triple grips. I'm getting more and more familiar with the BKKs. All I know, I put my hands on. We used to do the little thumbnail deal. See how sharp? I mean, they are super strong, super sharp. I'm probably end up going with the BKKs. I really, really like them. They're great hooks.
We got
definitely great hooks.
We got Kenny in the chat. He says, the Wake Frog, was that made by Tiger Crankbaits as well? Yes, it is, Kenny. It's made by Tiger Crankbaits. If you want, as always, since they are a sponsor of our Patreon, so you guys, all Patreon subscribers get 10% off their baits. Link in the episode description to their Facebook. I have been bullying Heidi to get a website so I could link that. Eventually that'll come, I promise. But yeah, you can go check that out there. Yeah, that's the treble hook thing is interesting. That's a whole, guys. I mean, we could do a rabbit hole on treble hooks and stuff because that is, I like for like jerk baits. I go with Aaron Martin's style, those finesse trebles. They're just, I have confidence in them. But then for crankbaits, for smallmouth particularly, I just feel like with triple grips, you're not going to the fish that you hook, you won't lose. Now, I understand the debate about the regular treble hooks where because of how they have the bend, you will get more fish stuck. But I still feel like if you're in the season where they're jumping a lot, with those round bends, when they jump, they're going to throw them on a crankbait or a lipless bait for that matter, in my opinion. Yeah. If they're not in a jumping mood, I feel like you can get away with the round bends. But when it gets warm and you feel like on a long cast, you set the hook, they're leaving. Those triple grips, man, you're going to keep them stuck.
I really like those triple grips because they just, put it this way, I'd rather not catch them than see them jump and I lose them. That's a heartbreaker for me, man, especially 3-4 pounders.
Yes.
I'd rather not even see them. But once I have them pinned, I mean, I want them to stay on. But, actually, Thomas, you brought up another good point where you talk about jerk baits, okay? And I'm hoping people following can chime in on this too. The debate on jerk baits, feather trebles or no feather treble.
Oh my God.
That's
yeah.
I have heard that debate for so long, man.
Yeah, I've heard that for an insanely long time. Let me make sure I go over Instagram, make sure I haven't missed any questions here, guys. But yeah, it's like the red treble hook. Like, when do you use the red treble hook? That was like a hot craze for a while.
Daiichis, there's Daiichi Reds.
Mm-hmm.
I ain't gonna lie, I fell for it. Can I say I seen the difference? I don't know. I mean, I think it's like everything else, Thomas. I think it's just a confidence thing. Because, the red hook is like, it triggers that feeding instinct. It's like, seeing an injured shad, you know. My whole 2 cents on feather trebles, I like them. I mean, I actually do like them. And here's my reasoning behind it. When I stopped that jerkbait, that feather treble, because of the displacement, when it stops, it just barely kind of just moves. I don't know. It just gives it that illusion of that caudal fin that's like still moving, But then I think there's other days that feather treble, maybe it turns them off. Mm-hmm. So if they're in like a more quote unquote lethargic mood, so yeah, that's a good one.
Well, and I think it does have a time or place. I mean, popper fishing, you always have them, but like the bladed treble hooks or something by like VMC, I got turned on to those for jerk baits. Just to have that extra little flash in really clean water. Now, this is something that I do with mine. Again, at home, let me know, is I won't put it on the back hook because I do believe in the idea of like, if I want them to zero in, I want them to zero in on one of the front treble hooks so you still have that backing of the back treble hooks. I don't want them nipping at the very back of the bait. So I put
this dude is talking center mass now.
yeah. I mean, I get really into that because I want those. Again, I fish for more smallmouth now from where I live, but those smallmouth are very visual compared to, I think, larges.
Absolutely.
And so they will come in hard on a jerk bait and stop like a cat and stare at it for a split second before they pounce. And I had the blade on the back, and what they'll do is they'll get close and see the flash, and then they'll try to nip the back. So I put it on the front, and I catch a few more fish by doing that.
Yeah, I know. I totally agree. You know, I've never tried it. I have seen it, but you're thinking on that. Oh yes, I totally agree with that. And because you want that focal point in the middle. I know I was joking around, said, you know, we was shooting for center mass. I mean, but that's what you want.
Yeah, that's what you
want.
want.
I don't want him to nip it because I want him to get a face full of trouble in his mouth. You know, no, that's and you know, that's a whole another, you know, talk. We talk about hooks and hook styles, and yeah, that's another one. I haven't tried it yet. I'm very interested in trying that. Maybe that's a science project for me this spring.
Yeah, dude.
I mean, I'd like to know that. I mean, I'm serious as a heart attack, man. Maybe I get on a crankbait bite and, you know, hey, anybody want to try it? I mean, hey, y'all message me. I'm interested in trying this because I don't know. I'm a nerd. I'm not gonna lie to you. I'm a nerd. I love science, and those type of things. Yeah, some of it is coincidental, you know, but you know. It's like, hey, Thomas, get on the front of the boat for 3 hours in the front, and I'll get on the front for you know, in the front and try for 3 hours. I mean, with the same bait. I mean, you know, it could be possible. So,
if people want to book a guided trip with you, where do they go?
So y'all can hit me up on www.kjsoutdooradventures.com. Y'all can always call me at 804-761-3131, or you can always DM me on Instagram or on Facebook. My Facebook is www.facebook.com/KJBasson1. I'm always there to answer questions. Y'all message me up. You know, I'm a friend of those seek friendship. Everybody else, they can hit the back door. You know, I just love folks that's in the fishing community. Thomas, I really appreciate you know, having me on the show. Everything you're doing on a conservation level, man. And you know, Thomas, it's not just you, man. As folks like y'all out there, there are Patreon supporters that are supporting fishing the DMV. We really appreciate you, you know, for supporting Thomas and fishing the DMV. If it wasn't for y'all, I wouldn't be sitting here having a conversation with Thomas right now.
True.
So we really appreciate y'all.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you guys help pay the bills. I mean, you know, all these subscription that you need to be able to go live. It's just, you know, under this economy we're in, everything's getting more expensive. Everyone wants their cut. So without you guys, I couldn't do this. And then you guys are getting a sneak peek now. This will be re-uploaded in about a week or two with good audio. Everything will be cleaned up, and I will have on the re-upload, I have a link to Chris's, all the social media and stuff, so you can just go down there and scroll through and click on it. So you might want to hurry, because when this re-uploads, he's going to get booked real quick. So go check him out right now. Get a trip booked for the spring. You do crappie, you do bass, you go Lake Anna, you do Potomac, correct?
Yeah, and also, you know, I'm not just a freshwater guy. I do saltwater too. So if you want to get some speckled trout, you want to get to see some redfish on the inland waters of the Chesapeake Bay. You know, I have an intracoastal, so my boat is set up just like a bass boat. I just don't have the carpet and everything. So, you know, I love fishing. I cut my teeth. I go to Biloxi, Mississippi, like every first week of June to kind of, you know, get my creative juices flowing as far as what to bring back to the Chesapeake Bay. So, yeah, I've got experience even in Biloxi, Mississippi. So that's kind of where I cut my teeth and learned, you know, it's just an amazing fishery. I mean, that's a show. Thomas, that's a show all by itself.
It's a whole other show. So, I mean, this is the one perk I do believe. And I'll leave with this is I am upset about the striper pop situation, but our children and grandchildren are going to have a world-class speckled trout and red fishery that I never had as a kid, because it was always blues and striper. And now get your boat or a kayak, go out there, and you're going to smoke trout and redfish. It's crazy. Yeah,
absolutely. And, you know, I'm really looking forward to, I mean, you know, what I would like to do is get some footage out there so folks can really see how great the fishery is in the DMV area. I mean, we're not just known for largemouth bass. We're not just known for, you know, stripers and smallmouth. I mean, we have a great saltwater fishery, even outside of the stripers. So that's just one obstacle right now that we're hoping and praying that we can bring back. I mean, my whole thing is, it's not about today. It's about tomorrow.
Yep.
So hopefully, you've been working with the, natural resources with Maryland. Hopefully, after March, getting on the board with the Potomac River Fisheries Commission, and working on common ground. So what can we do to make our fishery better for generations to come? I mean, that's what it's really all about, these young people out here. And, I'm going to leave with this, Thomas. If you got a young person out there, teenager, 12 years old, please, y'all, take them fishing. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of young people up here in Augusta County. And I seen a young person up here, and he had this topwater bait. And he said, and I say to him, I said, "Is that all you want?" He said, "I think so." I took him over. I said, "Are you sure?" I said, "Are you sure that's all you want?" I said, "I'll tell you what, if you had another pick, which one would you get?" And he pointed me out one. And I said, "We're going up there to the counter." The reason I did that was because if we don't invest in our kids today, let's stop investing in the Xbox. Let's stop investing in the PlayStations. Let's get them out in the water and show them, teach them. Because I'm going to tell you right now, if we don't invest in our children and getting them in the outdoors, either fishing or hunting, or, I think you do horseback riding, get them off the couch.
Yeah, get them off the couch.
Get them off the couch. So, I'm sitting there looking at young people going up and down the aisle now, and it does my heart joy. My guide service depends on what these young people are doing, because without the young people being back in the sport and reinvesting in the sport, there will be no outdoors. So y'all parents out there, get them out there on the water, get them out there in the woods. It means so much. But I thank you, Thomas. I thank you for this day, man.
No, I mean, this was a long time coming. Kris, guys, go check him out. Go get a book a guide trip with him. We're really rooting for you. We're going to take a small commercial break. I have to take a piss. And then we'll come back with our next guest right here. Thank you guys so much. Like and subscribe. We'll see you guys soon.
You're listening to Fishing the DMV with your host, Thomas Ahrens. Fishing the DMV is brought to you by Jake's Bait and Tackle, located in Winchester, Virginia.
If that doesn't get you jacked up, I don't know what will.